you think of all the different career stages that someone can have in financial services, there are going to be phases in our lives when we will want to have that flexibility to dial down maybe some of the work side of things because of care responsibilities or wanting to further study or take up more time to focus on health and well-being. There'll be seasons of our lives when we do want to do job sharing but still do really meaningful, valuable work where we're earning the highest amounts that we can from a salary point of view. And so that's a really positive way of thinking about why you would offer job sharing, for example, to everyone in the workplace if they wanted it at a certain point in their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And even thinking about what are the ways in which you could think more innovatively about transition to retirement. I mean, the businesses that I've worked in, we used to call them sages. Who are our sages? So when we think about, say, a knowledge transition program and we've got the sages that are actually retiring, often they'll want to probably start to slow down. Why aren't we pairing those up with a return to work, a woman who needs a bit of profit and loss exposure? And now we've got this perfect solution. So it's really starting to think outside the box and go back to purpose and to think about what is it that we're trying to achieve. Think less, the numbers are important, but the gender pay gap is a proxy measure for a whole range of things, of experiences, of structures, of processes, and it will take a long-term commitment to reduce it. However, when we think about changing the nature of that experience and thinking purposefully about that, there are many examples of this industry that has done that previously. I mean, who would have thought of having a product specifically for, students, reducing your fees, things like being attuned to single parent incomes and helping, lower the fees on banking and things like that. Innovations that are responding to the environment in which you're operating in. And so we know that they can apply that then to their own workforces. And if they don't, I can tell you there are a lot of other organisations and sectors out there that are really trying to get in front of the curve. Construction's one of them. I was just this morning at a round table thinking about how can they pipeline more women to their industry and how do they actually stop poaching from one another, because that's exactly what happens is because you haven't created a pipeline within the sector or the industry, you're actually poaching from one another. So you're just moving women around as opposed to building a real pipeline with women. And of course, those things have to be done at the very entry sort of level, even high school. But also, how do we look at the cross-skilling and look at other organisations and industries that we can bring people into the financial sector? There's no reason why people can't change careers, and they do, and they will want to. So financial services is primed for it because there's so many different roles.
Yeah, you could stay in the sector and move into so many different functions and keep on learning in terms of, well, what are the future technologies that will continue to evolve. And yeah, it's such a great opportunity to think about having those transferable skills that enable you to do really interesting, impactful work, be valued for your skills. So from an individual point of view, there's a lot in it in terms of what you can gain, but also from an employer point of view, just the ways to really rethink how do we employ people, keep them competitive against not just other organisations doing the same sort of work, but actually other industries. That's a real threat if other industries are starting to innovate on how they close the gender pay gap.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you think about, ESG, here's a great example, again, because the sustainability movement was really embraced by the insurance and financial services sector very early on. When you think about what is that word sustainable, what is that about? It's about thinking about your resources in a way that is not exploitive. It's thinking about future thinking. It's thinking about things in multiple ways. So, thinking the different stakeholders involved, the community, the shareholders. Profit's not a dirty word when you're doing it in a purposeful way that is sustainable and that leaves everybody in a much better situation than what they were when they entered into the industry or the organisation. So, it is that kind of commitment to having a holistic, purpose-built workforce that is actually going to be the key to turning this around, because we know that women and men, I don't think it's necessarily that gendered, but we know that there are times in women's lives where they are looking for a change, where they are looking for something new to do, where they're wanting to retrain, those kinds of things. And I think one of the biggest missed opportunities, and this is something that we're really looking forward to working with our employers on, is, in publishing the gender pay gap, it really was about a catalyst for a conversation. It wasn't about exposure, because that alone is not going to be enough. The last thing we want to do is not have women enter into an organisation, because then everything just stays the same. Then they just stay male dominated. Women will sit here at the top. Nothing will change. So when we talk about publishing the gender pay gaps in our employer statements, what we're putting out there publicly isn't an apology for having a gender pay gap. What it is, it's about saying, this is the line in the sand today, because it's a moment in time metric. It's taken at a particular time. This is what we've identified through a strong gender pay gap analysis, which I think every organisation must do, understand what's driving that gender pay gap, and then write about it to your potential employees, to your current employees, in a way that says, we understand what's going on. We've decided we're going to focus on this, this and this. It's not a scattergun approach, but we're going to take action on this. And I want this to be a call to action. I want you, if you're interested in this, to come and join us to make the change. That's a very different thing to saying the gender pay gap doesn't exist, it's calculated wrong, the only reason we've got this is because of a merger and acquisition and blah, 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 blah. Because that's not what's going to attract, and particularly the generations are changing. We know that the generations of workers that are coming through are purpose-driven. So they're going to respond to that call to action. So there's this wealth of opportunity to create a new way of being and to really be purpose-driven, created just from publishing the gender pay gap. It's not about naming and shaming, it's an opportunity.